If you've ever thought about taking a gap year, but also worried, what if I fall behind? What if I waste a year? You're not alone. A lot of people see a gap year as a break, a pause, or time off. And because of that, it often feels risky, like you're stepping away from progress. But a gap year isn't really about stepping away, it's about changing what you're paying attention to. Most people misunderstand what a gap year is for. They assume it should either be completely productive, building skills, gaining experience, staying ahead, or completely relaxing, resting, traveling, taking a break from everything. And when it doesn't clearly fit either of those, it can feel like you're doing it wrong. But a gap year isn't meant to be optimized in that way. What it's actually for, clarity over speed. A gap year is primarily about clarity, not speed. It's one of the few times where you can step back from structured expectations and actually observe what you're interested in, how you make decisions, what kind of environment you function best in. Because when you're constantly moving from one requirement to the next, school, work, deadlines, you don't always get the space to notice those things.
This is also why gap years can feel uncomfortable. Without a clear structure, it can feel like you're not doing enough, you're falling behind, or you're wasting time, especially when you see others continuing forward in a more traditional path. But that discomfort isn't necessarily a signal that something is wrong. It's often a signal that you're no longer operating on autopilot. When you're not constantly reacting to deadlines, you start to notice patterns. What holds your attention, what drains your energy, what you naturally move toward without being told. Those are things that are difficult to see when your time is fully structured, and those observations matter more than they might seem because they shape the decisions you make later. Without that clarity, it's easy to move forward quickly, but in a direction that doesn't fully fit, choosing paths based on expectation, pressure, or what seems like the next logical step. And while that can still lead somewhere, it often leads to confusion later. When things don't feel quite right, but you can't explain why. What a gap year is not. A gap year is not about doing nothing or avoiding responsibility or falling behind. It's also not about trying to prove that you're still being productive. It's about being intentional with your attention, even if that doesn't always look structured. Instead of asking, how can I make this year productive? A more useful question is, what can I learn about myself during this time? That shift changes how you use the time. It becomes less about output and more about understanding. If you're considering a gap year, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to follow a strict plan, and it doesn't need to look impressive from the outside. What matters is whether you come out of it with more clarity than you went in with. A gap year isn't meant to move you faster. It's meant to help you move in a direction that actually fits.